I didn't sign up to date someone in a wheelchair. This is ridiculous. The man's voice cut through the elegant ambiance of the upscale Manhattan restaurant like a blade, his face twisted in disgust as he stood abruptly from the table. Rebecca Morgan felt her heart shatter as tears welled in her eyes, her hands trembling on the wheels of her chair. The surrounding diners pretended not to notice, but their pitying glances burned into her skin. James Walker, pushing his janitor's cart nearby, witnessed everything and felt something stir in his chest. He approached her table, pulling out a clean handkerchief from his pocket, his voice gentle but firm. "You deserve better than someone who can't see your worth." Rebecca looked up, startled by the interruption. The man standing before her wore the navy uniform of the restaurant's cleaning staff, but his eyes held no pity, only a quiet dignity and unexpected kindness. "Thank you," she managed, taking the offered handkerchief. The simple gesture somehow anchored her amid the humiliation swirling around her. Her date had already stormed out, leaving her alone with a half-finished meal and the weight of stares from nearby tables. "I should go," Rebecca whispered, more to herself than to the kind stranger. She reached for her purse, fumbling slightly as she tried to compose herself. "Don't let him win twice," James replied, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "First by being cruel, then by ruining your evening. The salmon here is excellent. Would be ashamed to waste it." A small, surprised laugh escaped Rebecca's lips. The sound seemed to surprise her as much as it did him. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Perhaps you're right. Thank you." She glanced at his name tag. James. He smiled and returned to his work, moving his cleaning cart toward the back of the restaurant. Rebecca watched him go, struck by the encounter. In the span of minutes, a stranger had shown her more genuine respect than her date had during their entire dinner. She turned back to her meal, straightened her shoulders, and decided to finish her dinner with dignity. She wouldn't give the other diners the satisfaction of seeing her retreat. Rebecca Morgan had once been the brightest star in the financial investment world, her name whispered with reverence in boardrooms across New York. At 30, she commanded respect as CEO of Meridian Capital, one of the most prestigious investment firms in the city. Her sharp mind and keen instincts had built an empire from the ground up, turning a modest inheritance into a financial powerhouse that managed billions in assets. Her world had changed in an instant 5 years ago. A drunk driver ran a red light while she was returning from a late meeting, slamming into her car at 60 miles per hour. The doctors had been brutally honest about her prognosis when she woke up in the hospital days later. The damage to her spinal cord was irreversible. She would never walk again. For 3 weeks, Rebecca had allowed herself to disappear into a fog of painkillers and despair. Then on the 22nd day after the accident, she had opened her eyes with a new clarity. If she couldn't change her circumstances, she would adapt to them. She would not be defined by what she had lost, but by what she could still become. Against her doctor's advice, Rebecca had returned to work just 4 months after the accident. She had redesigned her penthouse apartment with ramps and lowered counters, hired a driver for her specially modified Mercedes, and thrown herself back into the cutthroat world of high finance with a ferocity that stunned her competitors. In the boardroom, her wheelchair became almost invisible. Her brilliance, her strategic mind, her ruthless competitive edge, these were what defined her to colleagues and clients. Under her leadership, Meridian Capital had increased its portfolio by 30% in 2 years, weathering market turbulence with remarkable stability. But outside those walls, the world saw the chair first and Rebecca second. Restaurants would seat at her by the kitchen, despite reservations for the best tables. People would speak to her companions rather than to her directly. Men who seemed interested in her online would ghost her the moment she mentioned her disability. Those who agreed to meet often couldn't hide their discomfort, their eyes constantly drawn to the chair as if it were a third person at the table. Rebecca's daily life was a complex choreography of adaptations and challenges. Each morning began with a regimen of stretches to combat the chronic pain that had become her constant companion. Twice weekly physical therapy sessions kept her upper body strong enough to maintain her independence. The medications that managed her nerve pain often left her nauseated and foggy-headed, a side effect she fought through sheer determination. Her stubbornness, once considered her greatest asset in business, sometimes worked against her. She refused help even when she needed it, pushing away the hands that reached out, determined to prove she could manage on her own. This pride had built a wall around her, a fortress that protected her from pity, but also kept out genuine connection. Tonight's blind date had been arranged by a well-meaning colleague who insisted that Richard was different, mature and understanding. The rejection had been swift and cruel, confirming her worst fears about her romantic prospects. As she finished her meal in solitude, Rebecca wondered if her colleague had even told Richard about her disability or if she'd been set up for this humiliation. On the other side of Manhattan, in a modest apartment in Queens, James Walker tucked his 7-year-old daughter Lily into bed. The small bedroom was filled with her artwork, colorful drawings taped to every available surface, each signed with her distinctive flourish. "Tell me about Mommy again," Lily whispered as James adjusted her blanket. Her eyes, so much like her mother's, gazed up at him with a mixture of curiosity and sadness that never failed to squeeze his heart. James settled on the edge of the bed, his large frame making the twin mattress dip. "Your mom was an artist like you. She could look at ordinary things and see beauty no one else noticed. She loved the color purple, hated raisins and cookies, and had the most beautiful laugh I've ever heard." "Like bells?" Lily asked, echoing a description she'd heard before. "Like bells," James confirmed. "When she laughed, it was like all the best sounds in the world happening at once. And she loved you more than anything. From the moment you were born, you were her masterpiece." Lily's small hand reached out to touch the photograph on her nightstand. A smiling woman with Lily's same bright eyes and delicate nose, holding a newborn wrapped in a yellow blanket. "Do you think she can see me from heaven?" James swallowed the lump in his throat. "I know she can, sweetheart. And I know she's so proud of you." After one more hug and a promise to leave the nightlight on, James quietly closed Lily's door and moved to the small kitchen. His mother, Martha, sat at the table, a cup of tea cooling before her, her eyes watching him with familiar concern. She asked about Emily again. Martha's voice was soft, weathered by years and sorrows. James nodded, filling a glass with water from the tap. "She always does before bed. I think it helps her feel connected." Martha sighed, her hands cupping the mug as if drawing warmth from it. "It's been 6 years, James. I worry about you both living in the past." "We're not living in the past, Mom." James's voice held an edge of defensiveness. "We're honoring her memory. There's a difference." At 68, Martha Walker had aged considerably since her daughter-in-law's death. The lines around her eyes had deepened, her once auburn hair now completely silver. She had moved closer to James after Emily's passing, taking on the role of part-time caregiver for Lily, while harboring deep fears about her son's emotional state. "I just want you to be happy," she said, the words well-worn between them. "I am happy," James replied automatically. "I have Lily, I have you. I have everything I need." The conversation was one they had had many times before, and both knew the steps to this dance. Martha wouldn't push further tonight. Instead, she stood and rinsed her mug in the sink. "I'll pick Lily up from school tomorrow. The teacher said it's a half day because of conferences." James nodded, grateful for the change of subject. "I'll be home by 1. Tell her she can bring a drawing to show me at work if she wants." After Martha had gone to the spare bedroom that had become hers, James sat alone at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills he'd been avoiding. The school's tuition statement showed an increase for the next term. The hospital still sent monthly reminders of the debt from Emily's treatments, despite his faithful payments for years. The rent had gone up twice since they'd moved to this smaller apartment. 6 years ago, James Walker had been a rising star in financial analysis at Morgan Stanley, his insights valued and his future limitless. He had a beautiful wife, a baby daughter, and a 3-bedroom apartment with a view of the park. His suits had been tailored, his shoes Italian leather, his weekends filled with gallery openings and dinner parties. Then came Emily's diagnosis: aggressive brain cancer. The 18 months that followed were a blur of hospital rooms, treatments that offered hope, then snatched it away, and watching the woman he loved fade before his eyes. When Emily finally passed something inside, James shattered. He couldn't return to the world of high finance, couldn't pretend that market trends and profit margins mattered when his daughter had lost her mother and he had lost his soulmate. He had sold their apartment, downsized to this modest 2-bedroom in Queens, and taken a job as a janitor at the very building where Meridian Capital occupied the top 15 floors. The work was simple, predictable, and most importantly, it allowed him to be there for Lily every afternoon and evening. His shift started at 4 a.m. and ended at noon, giving him time to pick Lily up from school and be the present father his daughter needed. His former colleagues sometimes recognized him when they passed in the lobby, their faces registering shock and pity. James had made peace with his choice. He had traded ambition for stability, prestige for presence. The financial sacrifice was substantial. His janitor's salary barely covered their expenses, even with Martha's Social Security helping with groceries. But in the economy of priorities, time with Lily was the currency that mattered most. James glanced at his watch and sighed. 3 hours until his alarm would go off. He should try to sleep, but nights were when memories of Emily felt most vivid. Instead, he pulled out his worn leather notebook, a gift from Emily on their last anniversary, and began reviewing the financial markets. Old habits died hard, and he still followed the patterns and movements of stocks with the same analytical eye that had once made him valuable to his firm. It was a private hobby now, a connection to the man he used to be. Lily Reed possessed the kind of resilience that only children who have experienced early loss can develop. At 7, she combined her mother's artistic soul with her father's analytical mind, creating elaborate drawings that told stories of princesses who were also scientists and dragons who were misunderstood rather than evil. Her teachers often commented on her emotional maturity, the way she seemed to understand things beyond her years. She didn't remember much about her mother, just fragments like the scent of lavender, the sound of lullabies, and the warmth of arms that held her. But she knew the shape of her father's sadness and had learned to navigate around it with the grace of someone much older. She would leave little notes in his lunchbox with smiley faces and hearts, and always made sure to tell him she loved him before bed. In her young mind, if she loved him enough, maybe the sadness would eventually go away. Lily's best friend at school was Marcus, a boy with cerebral palsy who used forearm crutches to walk. The other children sometimes stared or asked awkward questions, but Lily had appointed herself his unofficial protector. She told anyone who would listen that Marcus had super speed crutches and could go faster than anyone else when he wanted to. Their friendship had given her a unique perspective on disability. She saw Marcus first not as a condition or limitation. The morning after the disastrous blind date, Rebecca arrived at her office earlier than usual, hoping to lose herself in quarterly reports and market analyses. The building was still quiet, most employees not due for another 2 hours. She wheeled herself through the lobby, nodding to the night security guard who was finishing his shift. The elevator seemed to take forever, and when the doors finally opened on her floor, she was surprised to see lights already on in the hallway. James was there methodically cleaning the windows that looked out over the city. He wore simple navy coveralls with his name embroidered on the pocket, his movements efficient and practiced. Their eyes met in the reflection of the glass, and Rebecca felt a flush of embarrassment, wondering if he remembered her from the night before. "Good morning," James said, turning to face her properly. His voice carried the same gentle quality she remembered from the restaurant. "I hope you're feeling better today." Rebecca was taken aback by his directness. Most people pretended not to notice her struggles, maintaining a polite fiction that everything was always fine. "I'm managing," she replied, then found herself adding, "Thank you for what you said last night. It was kind of you." James set down his cleaning supplies and really looked at her for the first time in the bright fluorescent lighting. Despite the wheelchair, despite the emotional turmoil he had witnessed, there was a strength in her posture, a determination in the set of her jaw that spoke to battles fought and won. "I meant what I said. That man was a fool. Anyone who can't see past—" He gestured vaguely, then seemed to reconsider his words. "Anyone who can't see you for who you really are doesn't deserve your time." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the early morning shift, employees beginning to trickle in with their coffee cups and morning chatter. Rebecca excused herself, wheeling toward her office, but something made her pause at the door. "I'm usually here early," she said, not quite sure why she was sharing this information. "If you ever want to talk, I mean, while you're working. It gets quiet in the mornings." James nodded, a small smile crossing his features. "I'd like that," he said simply, then returned to his work as if CEO executives regularly invited janitors for morning conversations. Over the following weeks, their morning encounters became a routine neither had planned, but both came to anticipate. Rebecca would arrive to find James working on her floor, and they would exchange a few words that gradually lengthened into actual conversations. She learned that he worked the early shift to be home when Lily got back from school. He discovered that she had redesigned her entire apartment after the accident, installing ramps and lowered counters, refusing to let the wheelchair limit her independence. They talked about safe topics at first, the weather, the news, the coffee shop that had opened across the street. But gradually, inevitably, their conversations deepened. James was surprised at how easy Rebecca was to talk to, how she listened without judgment or pretense. Rebecca found herself looking forward to these quiet moments before the day's demands took over. One morning, Rebecca arrived to find James studying a financial report she'd left on her desk the previous evening. He looked up, caught, and quickly apologized. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have been looking at your papers." "Old habit. I used to," he trailed off embarrassed. "Used to what?" Rebecca asked, genuinely curious. James hesitated, then admitted, "I used to be a financial analyst at Morgan Stanley. Before my life changed." Rebecca's surprise was evident. "You were in finance." She hadn't expected this revelation from the quiet janitor who cleaned her offices. "For 12 years, James confirmed. "I specialized in emerging markets and technology sector analysis. But that was another lifetime ago." Before Rebecca could ask more questions, her assistant arrived with the day's schedule, and the moment was lost. But the knowledge shifted something in their dynamic. The next morning, she deliberately left a report on an upcoming technology merger on her desk before stepping out for coffee. When she returned, she casually asked James what he thought about the valuation. His analysis was incisive and nuanced, identifying weaknesses in the proposal that her team had missed. Rebecca was stunned by his insight, the way his mind clearly still worked at a high level despite years away from the field. "What happened?" she finally asked. "Why did you leave finance?" James's expression closed slightly, his hands continuing to work as he spoke. "My wife got sick, brain cancer. I needed to prioritize time over money so I could be there for her and our daughter. After she passed, I couldn't go back." The work didn't seem important anymore. The simplicity of his explanation hit Rebecca hard. In her world, career was everything, the measuring stick by which worth was calculated. James had walked away from success for love for family. It was a choice she had never contemplated. Their conversations took on a new dimension after that revelation. Rebecca found herself asking his opinion on market trends, discovering his insights were often more valuable than those of her highly paid analysts. James, in turn, saw past the CEO title to the woman who doubted herself, who wondered if she was doing enough, being enough. But these morning conversations weren't without consequences. Office gossip began to circulate about the CEO's unusual friendship with the janitor. Rebecca overheard whispers in the break room, caught sideways glances when she and James were seen talking. She ignored them all. In her position, she had learned long ago that people would always find something to talk about. One morning, about 3 weeks after that first encounter, Rebecca arrived to find James sitting on the floor beside his supply cart, his head in his hands. She wheeled closer, concerned. "James, are you all right?" He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "Today would have been our anniversary," he said quietly. "Emily and I, 14 years if she were still here. Some days it just hits harder than others." Rebecca understood that kind of ambush grief, the way it could tackle you without warning on seemingly ordinary days. She positioned her chair beside him, not saying anything at first, just being present. After a moment, she spoke. "Tell me about her." "What was she like?" James's face transformed as he talked about Emily. The way she laughed at his terrible jokes, how she could never quite fold fitted sheets properly, but insisted on trying her obsession with mystery novels that she would figure out by chapter 3, but read anyway. Rebecca listened, truly listened, in a way that few people did anymore. When he finished, she shared her own story. Not about lost love, but about lost identity, about the woman she had been before the accident and the struggle to figure out who she was now. "The worst part," she admitted, "is feeling like I'm a burden before I'm even a person. Like the chair is all anyone sees. That man at the restaurant, he took one look and decided I wasn't worth the effort of dinner. And maybe he's right. Maybe I'm asking too much, expecting someone to take on all of this." James stood, then moving to face her directly. His voice was fierce when he spoke. "Don't ever say that. Don't let people like him make you believe you're anything less than extraordinary. You run a major corporation. You've adapted to a life-changing injury with more grace than most people could imagine. You show up every day and face the world even when the world is cruel. That's not weakness. That's strength most people will never have." Rebecca felt tears threaten at his words, surprised by their impact. In her world of polished corporate interactions, such raw honesty was rare. Before she could respond, James continued, speaking more to himself now than to her. Sometimes the deepest pain isn't in what we've lost, but in learning to live with the empty space that remains. We build our lives around that space, shape ourselves to accommodate it, until one day we realize it's become part of who we are. The truth of his words resonated in a place Rebecca had kept carefully guarded. She had never thought of her adaptation that way, not as a diminishment, but as an evolution. Their conversation was interrupted by the sudden appearance of Rebecca's executive assistant, reminding her of an 800 meeting. The spell broken, James stood quickly. I should let you get to work. As the days passed, Rebecca found herself thinking about James's perspective, the way he had rebuilt his life around profound loss without bitterness or resentment. His choice to prioritize his daughter over career ambition challenged her own definitions of success. She had always measured achievement in promotions, portfolio growth, and profit margins. James measured it in bedtime stories, school pickups, and being present for the people he loved. Martha Walker was fiercely protective of what remained of her family. The trauma of watching Emily deteriorate had left her wary of anything that might bring more pain to her son and granddaughter. When she dropped Lily off at school each morning, she said a silent prayer that the day would be gentle to them both. She viewed any woman who showed interest in James with suspicion, convinced that no one could understand the depth of their loss or be worthy of stepping into Emily's place. This protective instinct had its roots in her own guilt. In Emily's final months, when the pain had become unbearable and the treatments were clearly failing, Martha had suggested to James that it might be time to let go, to focus on preparing Lily for life without her mother. James had reacted with anger, accusing her of giving up on Emily. Though they had reconciled before Emily's death, Martha carried the weight of those words, determined never to fail her son again by suggesting he move on too quickly. So when Lily came home from school one day talking excitedly about Daddy's friend at work, a lady in a wheelchair who was the boss of everyone, Martha's anxiety spiked. She casually questioned Lily about this new person, how often James saw her, what they talked about. Lily's innocent answers did little to ease her concern. The last thing James needed was to get involved with someone with significant physical challenges. Hadn't he been through enough as a caretaker already? Martha resolved to speak with James about maintaining appropriate boundaries with his employer, but the opportunity didn't immediately arise. Instead, she watched her son, carefully noting the subtle changes in his demeanor. The way he seemed more energized in the mornings, how he had begun reading financial news again, small signs that something was shifting in his carefully constructed routine. School was closed for a teachers' conference, and Martha had dropped Lily off to have lunch with her father. The 7-year-old burst through the stairwell door, her backpack bouncing, her face bright with excitement. "Daddy," she called, then stopped short when she saw Rebecca. Her eyes widened with curiosity rather than fear or discomfort. "Oh, hello. Are you Daddy's friend?" James started to introduce them formally, but Lily was already moving closer, fascinated by Rebecca's wheelchair. "That's so cool," she said with genuine enthusiasm. "Does it go fast?" "My friend Marcus has crutches, and he can go really fast on them. He says it's like having superpowers." Rebecca found herself laughing, a real laugh that came from deep in her chest. "It can go pretty fast," she admitted. "Want to see?" She gave a little demonstration, spinning the chair in a tight circle that made Lily giggle with delight. "This is Miss Morgan," James said, finally managing the introduction. "She runs this whole company." Lily's eyes grew even wider. "The whole thing, even the cafeteria. They have the best chocolate chip cookies." "Do you decide about the cookies? I delegate cookie decisions," Rebecca said solemnly to very important cookie experts. "But maybe you could give me your professional opinion on them. We could all have lunch together, if your dad doesn't mind." James hesitated, aware of the boundaries being crossed, the lines between their worlds blurring. But Lily was already chattering excitedly about cookies and asking if Rebecca's office had windows, and did she ever see birds up this high. Something in his chest loosened, watching his daughter interact so naturally with Rebecca, seeing none of the barriers that adults constructed. The lunch in the executive dining room was a revelation. Lily was enchanted by the floor-to-ceiling windows, the view of the city spreading out below them like a giant map. She peppered Rebecca with questions about everything from how elevators worked to whether she had ever met the mayor. Rebecca answered each question seriously, never talking down to the child, treating her curiosity with respect. James watched them interact, saw the way Rebecca's face softened when Lily showed her a drawing she had made of a princess, who was also a scientist, complete with a lab coat over her ball gown. She's in a wheelchair, like you, Lily explained, pointing to the carefully drawn figure. But she invented a special formula that makes plants grow super big so no one would ever be hungry. She's the smartest princess in the whole kingdom. Rebecca traced the drawing with one finger, her eyes suspiciously bright. She's wonderful, she said softly. Can I keep this? Lily beamed. I can make you another one. I could draw you as a princess. Daddy says you're the boss of everyone here. So you're kind of like a queen, right? The other executives in the dining room watched this unusual scene with reactions ranging from amusement to disapproval. Rebecca Morgan was known for her professional distance, her exacting standards. Seeing her laugh with a child sitting at a table with a janitor was jarring to those who knew only her boardroom persona. One executive, Thomas Anderson, approached their table with a tight smile. Rebecca, he said, his eyes flicking between her and James. I don't believe we've been introduced to your guests. Rebecca's spine straightened, her CEO demeanor snapping back into place. Thomas, this is James Walker and his daughter Lily. James works in our building, and Lily is giving me valuable feedback on our cafeteria cookie selection process. Thomas's smile didn't reach his eyes. How charming. When you have a moment, I'd like to discuss the Westridge acquisition. Of course, Rebecca replied coolly. I'll be in my office at 2. After Thomas walked away, James leaned forward, his voice low. We should probably go. I don't want to cause any trouble for you. Rebecca waved away his concern. Thomas Anderson has been trying to micromanage my lunch schedule since I became CEO. If he has a problem with who I invite to the executive dining room, he can take it up with me directly. But James could see the subtle shift in the room's energy, the curious glances, the whispered comments. The world they inhabited for a few precious hours was colliding with reality, and the resulting friction was uncomfortable. After lunch, as he walked Lily back to the lobby where Martha was waiting, his daughter tugged on his hand. I like Miss Rebecca, she announced. She's nice and she listens when I talk. Can we have lunch with her again? James glanced back toward the executive floor, his heart pulling in directions he hadn't expected. We'll see, sweetheart. Miss Morgan is very busy. But she looked sad when we left, Lily observed with that startling perception children sometimes displayed. Like how you look sometimes when you think I'm not watching. Maybe she needs friends too. The truth of his daughter's words stayed with James through his afternoon shift. He had seen that flash of loneliness when they said goodbye, the way Rebecca's professional mask had slipped back into place like armor. He understood that kind of protection, the way you could build walls so high that even you forgot what was behind them. That evening, as he helped Lily with her homework, Martha watched from the kitchen doorway. The building manager mentioned you had lunch with that CEO today, she said, her tone carefully neutral. The one in the wheelchair. James kept his eyes on Lily's math worksheet. Her name is Rebecca. Lily's school was closed and she invited us to lunch. It was kind of her. Martha moved closer, lowering her voice. James, be careful. You've been through enough. Lily's been through enough. Getting involved with someone like that, with those kinds of challenges? Someone like what, Mom? James's voice was sharper than intended. Someone successful, someone kind. Someone who made Lily laugh for the first time in weeks. Martha's face crumpled slightly. Someone who will complicate your lives. You have to think about what's best for Lily. I am thinking about Lily, James replied. I'm thinking about how naturally she connected with Rebecca, how she didn't see a disability but a person. Maybe we could all learn something from that. The conversation ended there, but the tension lingered through dinner and into the evening routine. After Lily was asleep, James sat at the kitchen table with his financial notebook again, but his mind kept drifting to Rebecca. He hadn't felt this kind of connection to anyone since Emily. The thought terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. For Rebecca, the lunch with James and Lily had been unexpectedly affecting. She was accustomed to commanding respect in professional settings, to being valued for her strategic mind and business acumen. But Lily's uncomplicated acceptance, her delight in the cool wheelchair, her immediate inclusion of Rebecca in her imaginative world, these reactions had touched something long dormant. When she returned to her office, Rebecca found herself staring at Lily's drawing at the princess scientist in a wheelchair saving the world from hunger. The child had seen her disability not as a limitation, but as simply another characteristic like hair color or height. It was refreshing and heartbreaking in equal measure. She was still contemplating the drawing when Thomas Anderson knocked on her door precisely at 2. He entered without waiting for her response, settling into the chair across from her desk with the confidence of someone accustomed to being heard. "Rebecca," he began, his tone measured as a member of the board, "I feel obligated to express some concern about appearances. While diversity and inclusion are certainly company values we support, there are still certain optics to consider." Rebecca's expression remained impassive. "What exactly are you trying to say?" Thomas, fraternizing with the janitorial staff in the executive dining room, sends a mixed message. "There are hierarchies in place for a reason. I'm simply suggesting a more appropriate boundary between yourself and the maintenance personnel." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as Rebecca leaned forward, her voice dangerously soft. "Let me be very clear, Thomas. Who I choose to have lunch with is not a board matter. Mr. Walker and his daughter were my guests today. If that makes you uncomfortable, I suggest you examine why." Thomas shifted in his chair. "It's not about discomfort, Rebecca. It's about maintaining the professional environment we've worked so hard to establish. You, of all people, should understand the importance of perception." "I do understand perception," she replied. "I understand that I am perceived as my wheelchair before I am perceived as a CEO. I understand that every day I have to prove my competence in ways you never will. And I understand that a 7-year-old child showed more genuine humanity today than some of my colleagues have in 5 years. Now, unless you have actual business to discuss, I have a company to run." The confrontation left Rebecca with a pounding headache, but also a clarifying anger. Thomas's thinly veiled disapproval was emblematic of the barriers she faced daily. The unspoken rules about who belonged where, who was allowed to connect with whom. She had fought too hard for her position to let antiquated notions of hierarchy dictate her personal interactions. That night, her penthouse apartment felt emptier than usual. The sleek, minimalist design that had once felt elegant now seemed sterile. The adaptations she had made after the accident, the ramps, the lowered counters, the specialized bathroom fixtures, were functional but impersonal. Nothing reflected the woman she was beyond her disability, beyond her profession. She wheeled to the window, looking out at the glittering Manhattan skyline. Somewhere out there, James was probably reading a bedtime story to Lily in a modest apartment that likely contained more warmth than her entire penthouse. The thought stirred something unexpected. Not envy exactly, but a wistful recognition of what was missing from her carefully constructed life. Rebecca's daily existence was a testament to her determination. Each morning began before dawn with a series of stretches to combat the muscle spasms that plagued her lower body. The bathroom routine that had once taken minutes now required nearly an hour. Dressing was a calculated process, choosing clothes that were both professional and practical for someone who spent the day seated. Her driver arrived precisely at 6:30, helping her into the specially modified Mercedes that had cost more than most people's homes. At work, she maintained a punishing schedule, pushing through the fatigue and pain that were her constant companions. Twice weekly physical therapy sessions were blocked on her calendar as private appointments, and her assistant was under strict instructions never to reschedule them. The nerve pain medication that allowed her to function often left her nauseated, a side effect she hid behind closed doors and peppermint tea. What few people understood was the mental toll of navigating a world not designed for her. The restaurants that claimed to be accessible but had bathrooms down a flight of stairs. The clients who insisted on meeting at golf courses or yacht clubs with limited accommodations. The constant calculations. Could she get from this meeting to that one with enough time to use a bathroom she could actually access? Would the venue for the charity gala have ramps that weren't tucked away by the kitchen like an embarrassing afterthought? These were the realities she never discussed, the challenges she met with a steel spine and gritted teeth. To show weakness was to invite pity, and pity was the one thing Rebecca Morgan could not abide. Over the next month, the morning conversations with James continued evolving into a friendship neither had expected. Rebecca learned about James's past career in finance, his analytical mind still sharp despite years away from the field. She found herself asking his opinion on market trends, discovering his insights were often more valuable than those of her highly paid analysts. James, in turn, saw past the CEO title to the woman who doubted herself, who wondered if she was doing enough being enough. One morning, Rebecca arrived to find a small gift on her desk. A new drawing from Lily, this time of 3 figures holding hands. one in a wheelchair, one tall with a mop, and one small with pigtails. Underneath, in careful childish handwriting, were the words, "My new friend, Miss Rebecca, and Daddy and me." Rebecca stared at the drawing for a long moment, feeling something crack open in her chest. This 7-year-old child saw her as part of a unit, a natural extension of her small family. It was so simple, so pure, untainted by the complexities adults imposed on relationships. James appeared in her doorway looking embarrassed. "I told her not to bother you with her drawings. She insisted I bring it up before you got here." "It's not a bother," Rebecca said quickly. "It's beautiful. She's very talented. She gets that from her mother." James said, then seemed surprised he had mentioned Emily so easily. "Emily was an artist, painted mostly landscapes. Lily has her eye for color." "You must miss her terribly," Rebecca said softly. James moved into the office, something he had never done before, taking a seat in one of the chairs facing her desk. "Every day. But lately it's been different. Less like drowning, more like remembering how to swim, if that makes sense." Their eyes met and held something unspoken passing between them. Rebecca felt her heart rate quicken, a sensation she had thought lost along with the feeling in her legs. She was about to speak when her assistant knocked, reminding her of an 800 meeting. The spell broken, James stood quickly. "I should let you get to work." "But Rebecca, would you like to have dinner with us at our place? I mean, nothing fancy, just spaghetti." "Lily's favorite. She's been asking when she can see you again." Rebecca felt tears threaten. In all the months since her accident, no one had invited her to their home, not for a casual family dinner. There were work events, formal occasions where her presence was professionally required, but not this simple inclusion in everyday life. "I would love that," she said, meaning it more than he could know. The dinner was scheduled for Friday night. Rebecca spent an absurd amount of time choosing what to wear, finally settling on jeans and a soft sweater, wanting to look approachable rather than corporate. She arrived at James's building in Queens, a modest but well-maintained complex with a ramp that looked recently installed. James met her at the entrance and she wondered if he had arranged for the ramp. "The super put it in last week," he said, seemingly reading her thoughts. "Said it was overdue, making the building more accessible." But she saw the paint on his hands, the telltale signs of recent construction work, and knew he had likely spent his own money and time ensuring she could enter easily. The gesture touched her deeply, not because she needed help, but because he had recognized a potential barrier and removed it without fanfare or expectation of gratitude. The apartment was small but warm, filled with Lily's artwork on every wall. The furniture was mismatched but comfortable, and the smell of garlic and tomato sauce filled the air. Lily bounded over immediately, grabbing Rebecca's hand. "Come see my room. I want to show you my art supplies." The evening unfolded with a naturalness that surprised them all. Lily chattered through dinner about school, her best friend Marcus, the book she was reading, about a detective dog. Rebecca found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in years. The constant pressure to perform, to prove herself worthy, despite her disability, simply absent in this small, warm kitchen. After dinner, while James washed dishes, Lily curled up next to Rebecca's chair, showing her a photo album. "This is Mommy," she said, pointing to a woman with Lily's same bright eyes and warm smile. "Daddy says she's in heaven now, watching over us. Do you think she can see us from there?" Rebecca touched the photo gently. "I think the people we love never really leave us. They stay in our hearts, in our memories, in the way we see the world because of what they taught us." Lily considered this seriously. "Daddy's been happier since he met you." He smiles more. "Maybe Mommy sent you to help us not be so sad." James, listening from the kitchen, felt his throat close with emotion. He watched Rebecca smooth Lily's hair, saw the tender expression on her face, and realized that somewhere along the way, he had begun to fall for this remarkable woman. The thought terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. As the evening wound down and Lily was sent to brush her teeth, James walked Rebecca to the door. "Thank you for coming, for being so wonderful with Lily. She doesn't open up to many people." "She's an amazing little girl," Rebecca said. "You've done an incredible job raising her." "I muddled through," James admitted. "Some days better than others. But tonight felt right. Complete somehow." Before Rebecca could respond, Lily appeared in her pajamas for a goodbye hug. As she wrapped her small arms around Rebecca's neck, she whispered, "Will you come back, please? If your dad says it's okay." Rebecca whispered back, her eyes meeting James's over Lily's head. "It's more than okay," he said softly. It's hoped for. The drive home was a blur for Rebecca, her mind replaying every moment of the evening. She had been in relationships before, had thought she knew what connection felt like. But this was different. This was being seen, truly seen, not as a CEO or a woman in a wheelchair, but as simply Rebecca. It was intoxicating and terrifying. And as her car approached her building, Rebecca realized with sudden clarity that she didn't want to return to her empty penthouse. The thought of its pristine silence, its perfect accessibility that accommodated her wheelchair, but not her heart, felt unbearable after the warmth of James's apartment. For the first time since the accident, Rebecca allowed herself to imagine a different future. One where her worth wasn't measured in acquisitions and portfolio growth, but in the light in a child's eyes when she told a story in the quiet understanding between two people who had both known profound loss. The possibility was as frightening as it was exhilarating. School was closed for a teachers' conference, and Martha had dropped Lily off to have lunch with her father. The 7-year-old burst through the stairwell door, her backpack bouncing, her face bright with excitement. "Daddy," she called, then stopped short when she saw Rebecca. Her eyes widened with curiosity rather than fear or discomfort. "Oh, hello. Are you Daddy's friend?" James started to introduce them formally, but Lily was already moving closer, fascinated by Rebecca's wheelchair. "That's so cool," she said with genuine enthusiasm. "Does it go fast? My friend Marcus has crutches, and he can go really fast on them. He says it's like having superpowers." Rebecca found herself laughing, a real laugh that came from deep in her chest. "It can go pretty fast," she admitted. "Want to see?" She gave a little demonstration, spinning the chair in a tight circle that made Lily giggle with delight. "This is Miss Morgan," James said, finally managing the introduction. "She runs this whole company." Lily's eyes grew even wider. "The whole thing, even the cafeteria. They have the best chocolate chip cookies." "Do you decide about the cookies? I delegate cookie decisions," Rebecca said solemnly to very important cookie experts. "But maybe you could give me your professional opinion on them. We could all have lunch together, if your dad doesn't mind." James hesitated, aware of the boundaries being crossed, the lines between their worlds blurring. But Lily was already chattering excitedly about cookies and asking if Rebecca's office had windows, and did she ever see birds up this high. Something in his chest loosened, watching his daughter interact so naturally with Rebecca, seeing none of the barriers that adults constructed. The lunch in the executive dining room caused a ripple of whispers among the staff. The CEO, known for her intimidating presence and razor-sharp business acumen, was laughing with a child while sitting across from a janitor. Rebecca ignored the stares, focusing instead on Lily's wide-eyed wonder at the panoramic view of Manhattan spread 40 floors below them. "Do birds ever crash into your windows?" Lily asked between bites of her grilled cheese sandwich. "Because they might not see the glass, right?" Rebecca leaned forward conspiratorially. "We have special glass with tiny dots that birds can see but people can't. And do you know why we have it?" Lily shook her head, fascinated. "Because I asked for it. When I first became CEO, I saw a bird hit the window, and it made me so sad that I had all the windows changed. Some people thought it was a waste of money, but I believe every living thing deserves consideration." James watched this exchange, struck by this glimpse of Rebecca's compassion, extending beyond humans to something as seemingly insignificant as birds. It revealed a depth to her he hadn't fully appreciated before. The way her own experience with limitations had perhaps expanded her empathy rather than narrowed it. As they ate, Lily pulled out a drawing from her backpack, spreading it carefully on the table beside her plate. "I made this in art class yesterday," she announced proudly. "It's a princess scientist. See her crown and her lab coat." Rebecca studied the colorful drawing with genuine interest. The figure wore both a glittering crown and a white coat, standing, or rather sitting, beside what appeared to be scientific equipment. "She's in a wheelchair like you," Lily explained, pointing to the carefully drawn figure. "But she invented a special formula that makes plants grow super big so no one would ever be hungry. She's the smartest princess in the whole kingdom." Rebecca traced the drawing with one finger, her eyes suspiciously bright. "She's wonderful," she said softly. "Can I keep this?" Lily beamed. "I can make you another one. I could draw you as a princess. Daddy says you're the boss of everyone here. So you're kind of like a queen, right?" The innocent comparison brought a smile to Rebecca's face. "I suppose it's a little like that, though, yeah, and I have a board of directors I answer to, which a queen wouldn't have." Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of Thomas Anderson, his expression tight as he surveyed the unlikely trio. Rebecca, he said with forced pleasantness, I wasn't aware you had guests today. Rebecca's spine straightened imperceptibly, her CEO persona slipping back into place like armor. Thomas, meet Lily Walker and her father James. They're my personal guests today. Thomas's eyes flicked between James and his maintenance uniform, and Rebecca disapproval barely concealed behind his professional smile. Of course. How nice. When you have a moment, I'd like to discuss the Westridge acquisition before the board call. I'll be in my office at 2, Rebecca replied, her tone making it clear the current conversation was over. After Thomas walked away, James set down his fork, suddenly uncomfortable. We should probably go. I don't want to cause any problems. Rebecca's expression softened as she turned back to them. You're not causing problems. Thomas just likes to remind everyone of the corporate hierarchy whenever possible. She reached across the table, briefly touching James's hand. I invited you both, and I'm glad you're here. The gesture was small, but the warmth in her eyes sent a jolt through James that he hadn't felt in years. For a moment, the dining room with its polished surfaces and subtle wealth faded away, and all he could see was Rebecca, not the CEO, not the woman in the wheelchair, just Rebecca with her intelligence and strength and unexpected gentleness with his daughter. After lunch, as James walked Lily back to the lobby where Martha was waiting, his daughter tugged on his hand. I like Miss Rebecca, she announced. She's nice and she listens when I talk. Can we have lunch with her again? James glanced back toward the executive floor, his heart pulling in directions he hadn't expected. We'll see, sweetheart. Miss Morgan is very busy, but she looked sad when we left. Lily observed with that startling perception children sometimes displayed. Like how you look sometimes when you think I'm not watching. Maybe she needs friends too. Martha was waiting in the lobby, her expression shifting from impatience to curiosity as she took in Lily's excited chatter. The older woman's eyes narrowed slightly when she heard where they'd been and with whom. Lily, why don't you go look at the fish in that tank while I talk to your dad? She suggested, pointing to the decorative aquarium near the security desk. Once Lily was out of earshot, Martha turned to James, her voice low. You had lunch with your boss, the CEO, James. What are you thinking? It wasn't like that, Mom. Lily met her, they hit it off, and Rebecca invited us to lunch. It was perfectly innocent. Martha's skeptical expression spoke volumes. There's nothing innocent about a relationship with your employer, especially one with complications. You've worked so hard to create stability for Lily. Why risk it by getting involved with someone in her position? In all senses of the word, the implication behind her words stung. We're not involved. We're friends. And what exactly do you mean by her position? That she's my boss? Or that she uses a wheelchair? Martha had the grace to look slightly embarrassed, but she held her ground. Both, if you want the truth. The power differential alone makes it inappropriate. Add in her disability, and you're looking at a situation that could bring a lot of stress into your lives. Into Lily's life. Haven't you all been through enough? James felt a flash of anger he rarely directed at his mother. Rebecca's wheelchair doesn't define her any more than my job defines me. And you of all people should know better than to judge someone based on what you think might be difficult. Martha's face crumpled slightly at the rebuke. I'm not judging James. I'm worried. I watched you pour everything you had into caring for Emily. I saw what it cost you. I just don't want to see you set yourself up for more heartache. James softened, recognizing the fear behind his mother's concern. Mom, Rebecca doesn't need a caretaker. She's one of the most independent, capable people I've ever met. And we're just getting to know each other. That's all. But the conversation lingered with him throughout the afternoon, raising questions he'd been avoiding. What exactly was developing between him and Rebecca? And was he ready for whatever it might become? Back in her office, Rebecca found herself distracted from the Westridge acquisition documents she should have been reviewing. Lily's drawing lay on the corner of her desk, the princess scientist in her wheelchair, smiling up with crayon confidence. The child's immediate acceptance, her fascination with the wheelchair as something cool rather than tragic, had touched something deep within Rebecca. Her thoughts were interrupted by Thomas Anderson's precise knock at exactly 2 o'clock. He entered with a tablet in hand, settling into the chair opposite her desk, with an air of someone about to deliver an important message. Rebecca, he began without preamble, as a longtime board member, and someone who was instrumental in your appointment as CEO, I feel obligated to express some concern about appearances. She raised an eyebrow but said nothing, waiting for him to continue. Thomas shifted slightly, smoothing his already impeccable tie. While Meridian Capital is committed to diversity and inclusion, there are still certain optics to consider. Fraternizing with maintenance staff, particularly in the executive dining room, sends mixed messages about the corporate culture we're trying to maintain. Rebecca's expression remained neutral, though her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on her armrests. Are you suggesting that as CEO I shouldn't choose who I have lunch with? Of course, you're free to dine with whomever you please in your personal time, but in this building there are certain expectations, standards of professionalism. Thomas leaned forward, lowering his voice as if sharing a confidence. Some of the other executives have expressed discomfort. There's talk. Let them talk. Rebecca responded, her voice cool. Mr. Walker and his daughter were my guests today. If that makes anyone uncomfortable, perhaps they should examine why a child's presence in the executive dining room threatens their sense of corporate hierarchy. Thomas's jaw tightened. It's not the child that concerns them, Rebecca. It's the impression that you might be getting personally involved with a member of the janitorial staff. The board has always supported your leadership despite the challenges. But appearances matter in our position. The implication hung in the air between them. That her appointment as CEO had been controversial because of her disability, that the board's tolerance had limits, that she should be particularly careful about appearances. Rebecca felt a cold fury rise within her. She wheeled her chair around the desk until she was directly facing Thomas, close enough that he had to look up at her from his seated position. Let me be very clear, Thomas, she said, her voice dangerously soft. Who I choose to spend time with is not a board matter. My personal life is my own, as long as it doesn't affect my performance or the company's bottom line. She gestured toward the financial reports on her desk. Meridian's stock is up 12% since I took over. Our client retention rate is the highest in the industry. If anyone on the board has concerns about my leadership, they are welcome to review my results. Thomas stood, recognizing the dismissal in her tone. Just consider how things look, Rebecca. That's all I'm asking. Perception becomes reality in our world, and you've worked too hard to risk it all for... He paused, glancing at Lily's drawing, whatever this is. After he left, Rebecca sat in silence, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. Thomas's warning had touched on insecurities she kept carefully buried. The knowledge that some board members had only reluctantly supported her appointment, that she was constantly under greater scrutiny than her predecessors, that one significant misstep could be used as justification to question her fitness for the role. But another voice inside her, one that had grown stronger in recent weeks, questioned whether success that required cutting herself off from genuine human connection was worth the cost. Before her accident, she had been driven, ambitious, sometimes ruthless, in pursuit of her goals. The wheelchair had changed how the world saw her, but perhaps more importantly, it had changed how she saw the world, revealing the arbitrary nature of the barriers people constructed, the fragility of status, the preciousness of authentic connection. Rebecca's daily existence was a complex choreography of adaptations and challenges that most people never saw. Each morning began before dawn with physical therapy exercises to combat muscle atrophy in her legs. Dressing took 3 times as long as it once had, requiring careful planning and specialized tools. Her driver arrived precisely at 6:30, helping her into the vehicle that had been modified at considerable expense to accommodate her wheelchair. At work, she maintained a punishing schedule, pushing through the fatigue and pain that were her constant companions. The nerve pain medication that allowed her to function often left her nauseated, a side effect she hid behind closed doors and peppermint tea. She had fought too hard for her position to show any weakness, to allow anyone to question her capability based on her physical limitations. What few people understood was the mental toll of navigating a world not built for her. The restaurants that claimed to be accessible, but had bathrooms down a flight of stairs. The clients who insisted on meeting at golf courses or yacht clubs with limited accommodations. The constant calculations. Could she get from this meeting to that one with enough time to use a bathroom she could actually access? Would the venue for the charity gala have ramps that weren't tucked away by the kitchen, like an embarrassing afterthought? These were the realities she never discussed. The challenges she met with gritted teeth and steely determination. To show weakness was to invite pity, and pity was the one thing Rebecca Morgan could not abide. But lately she had begun to question whether her fierce independence was a strength or a wall she had built to keep everyone at a distance. Her friendship with James had created cracks in that wall. Unlike others who tiptoed around her disability or overcompensated with effusive offers of help, James simply acknowledged it as part of who she was, neither defining her by it nor pretending it didn't exist. Their conversations flowed naturally from business to personal matters. His insights on market trends as valuable as his perspectives on rebuilding a life after profound loss. One morning, 2 weeks after the lunch with Lily, Rebecca arrived at the office to find James unusually distracted. His movements lacked their typical efficiency, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. She wheeled closer, concerned. "James, is everything all right?" He glanced up, clearly troubled. "It's Lily's school," he admitted after a moment's hesitation. "They're raising tuition by 15% next year. I've been going over the numbers all night, but I just can't make it work without taking a second job." Rebecca frowned. "I thought you chose that particular school because of their accommodations for Lily's friend Marcus. Wouldn't changing schools affect both children?" James nodded, his expression grim. "Marcus's family is in the same boat. His medical expenses are already stretching them thin, and now this. The public schools in our district don't have the same level of support for kids with physical challenges. Lily and Marcus have become inseparable. They protect each other." He ran a hand through his hair, fatigue evident in every line of his body. "I've been looking into extra work, but the hours would cut into my time with Lily. It's a no-win situation." "What about returning to finance?" Rebecca asked carefully. "I know several firms that would value your expertise even on a consulting basis." James's smile was tinged with sadness. "I've considered it, but those jobs want 60-hour weeks and constant availability. I walked away from that world because it cost me precious time with Emily that I can never get back. I promised myself I'd be there for Lily, really there, not just financially." The raw honesty of his response struck Rebecca deeply. In her world, career advancement was the unquestioned priority. People regularly sacrifice family time, personal interests, and even health in pursuit of professional success. James had made the opposite choice, valuing presence over prestige, time over money. It challenged her own definitions of what constituted a successful life. Later that day, Rebecca received an unexpected call from an old business school classmate, now a senior partner at a prestigious consulting firm. They needed someone with James's specific expertise in emerging markets for a part-time position, 3 days a week with flexible hours. The pay was substantial, the work could largely be done remotely, and the initial contract was for 6 months with potential for extension. It seemed like perfect timing, almost too perfect. Rebecca hesitated, knowing that introducing this opportunity required careful handling. She didn't want James to feel like a charity case, didn't want to overstep boundaries in their evolving relationship. But the position genuinely matched his qualifications, and the flexibility would allow him to maintain his priority of being present for Lily. The next morning, she mentioned the opportunity, casually framing it as a favor to her colleague who was struggling to find someone with the right experience. "I told her I might know someone, but I wanted to check with you first." "It's entirely your decision, of course." James was quiet for a long moment, clearly wrestling with competing priorities. When would they need an answer? By the end of the week? Rebecca watched his expression carefully. "Take some time to think about it. I can put you in direct contact with Sydney if you have questions about the specifics." That evening, James sat at his kitchen table after Lily was asleep, spreadsheets and budget calculations scattered around him. The consulting position would more than cover Lily's tuition increase. It would allow them to finally pay off Emily's medical bills and perhaps even start a college fund. But it would mean significant changes to their routine, potentially less time together if the workload grew beyond the promised 20 hours per week. Martha watched him from the doorway, a cup of tea in her hands. "You're actually considering it, aren't she?" observed. James nodded without looking up. "The money would solve a lot of problems and create new ones," Martha countered, settling into the chair across from him. "You gave up that world for a reason, James. The stress, the pressure, the constant demands. It's different now. I'd be more aware of the boundaries, more protective of my time with Lily. And it's only 3 days a week." Martha's expression remained skeptical. "And this opportunity just happened to fall into your lap. Through your CEO friend James, you don't find that convenient?" Her implication was clear and it stung. "You think Rebecca is offering me charity?" Creating a job that doesn't really exist? I think she might have good intentions, Martha conceded. But there's always a cost to these things. You'll be beholden to her, caught between two worlds. And what happens when the contract ends, or when her interest in playing fairy godmother to our family fades? That's not fair, Mom, James's voice hardened. Rebecca isn't playing at anything. She saw a need and tried to help by connecting me with a legitimate opportunity. That's what friends do. Friends? Martha repeated the word heavy with meaning. Is that all she is to you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like something more is developing. And I'm concerned about what that means for you and Lily. James stood, gathering the papers into a pile with more force than necessary. I don't need you to protect me from Rebecca, Mom. She's been nothing but kind and respectful to me and to Lily. Martha's eyes softened with genuine concern. It's not her intentions, I questioned James. It's the situation. She lives in a different world. Penthouse apartments, executive dining rooms, drivers waiting at the curb. You're raising Lily in a two-bedroom walk-up and working nights to make ends meet. And there's her condition to consider. Her condition, James stopped short, anger flashing in his eyes. She uses a wheelchair, Mom. That's not a disease or a character flaw. It's just part of who she is, like having brown eyes or being right-handed. Martha sighed heavily. Don't twist my words. You know what I mean. Getting involved with someone with significant physical challenges brings complications. I watched you care for Emily through her illness. I saw what it did to you, how it drained you emotionally and physically. Do you really want to sign up for that again? Does Lily need to see you become a caretaker once more? The comparison ignited something in James that had been building for weeks. That's where you're completely wrong, he said, his voice low but intense. Rebecca doesn't need a caretaker. She's one of the most fiercely independent people I've ever met. She runs a billion-dollar company, lives alone, and manages challenges every day that would break most people. Her wheelchair is part of her life, but it doesn't define her any more than Emily's cancer defined her, or than my job defines me. Martha looked taken aback by his vehemence. I'm just trying to protect you both from more pain. I know, Mom, James softened, recognizing the fear behind her concern. But life doesn't work that way. You can't avoid pain by avoiding connection. Emily taught me that. Even knowing how it would end, I wouldn't trade our time together for anything. And Lily deserves to see me living fully, not just existing safely. The conversation ended there, but it left James with much to consider. The next morning, he called Sydney directly to discuss the consulting position, asking detailed questions about expectations, hours, and the specific projects involved. By the afternoon, he had decided to accept the offer with clear boundaries established regarding his availability and work schedule. When he told Rebecca of his decision the following day, her genuine pleasure confirmed his suspicion that this was a legitimate opportunity, not charity disguised as work. The consulting position would begin in 2 weeks, allowing him time to adjust his schedule at the building. He would maintain his early morning janitorial shift 3 days a week, partly for the stable income, but also, he admitted to himself, because he valued the morning conversations with Rebecca too much to give them up entirely. For Rebecca, James's acceptance of the consulting position brought unexpected complexity to their relationship. She was genuinely happy for him. His financial expertise was too valuable to waste, and the additional income would ease the pressure on his family. But she also recognized that their dynamic was shifting. He would no longer be just the janitor with financial insights, but a colleague of sorts, moving between worlds as she did, though, in a different way. Their morning conversations continued evolving with their changing relationship. James shared his preparations for returning to the financial world, his mixture of excitement and trepidation. Rebecca offered advice on current market trends, connecting him with resources to bridge the 6-year gap in his professional knowledge. One morning, Rebecca arrived to find a small gift on her desk. A beautiful hand-drawn card from Lily depicting 3 figures holding hands, one in a wheelchair, one tall with a briefcase instead of a mop, and one small with pigtails. Underneath, in careful, childish handwriting, were the words, "My new friend, Miss Rebecca, and Daddy and me." James appeared in her doorway, looking slightly embarrassed. I told her not to bother you with her drawings, but she insisted I bring it up before you got here. She's very excited about my new job. Keeps telling everyone her daddy is going to be wearing suits again. It's not a bother, Rebecca said quickly, genuinely touched. It's beautiful. She's incredibly talented. She gets that from her mother, James replied, then seemed surprised he had mentioned Emily so easily. Emily was an artist, painted mostly landscapes. Lily has her eye for color and composition. You must miss her terribly, Rebecca said softly. James moved into the office, taking a seat in one of the chairs facing her desk. Every day, he admitted. But lately it's been different. Less like drowning, more like remembering how to swim, if that makes sense. For so long, grief was this overwhelming force that threatened to pull me under. Now it feels more like a current I've learned to navigate. Still powerful, still there, but not all-consuming. Their eyes met and held something unspoken passing between them. Rebecca felt her heart rate quicken, a sensation she had thought lost along with the feeling in her legs. She was about to speak when her assistant knocked, reminding her of an 800 meeting. The moment broken, James stood quickly. I should let you get to work. Before he reached the door, he turned back. Rebecca, would you like to have dinner with us at our place? Nothing fancy, just spaghetti. Lily's favorite. She's been asking when she can see you again. Rebecca felt a surge of emotion at the simple invitation. In all the months since her accident, no one had invited her to their home for a casual family dinner. There had been formal events, professional obligations, but not this inclusion in everyday life, with its messy authenticity and comfortable intimacy. I'd love that, she said, meaning it more than he could know. The dinner was scheduled for Friday night. Rebecca spent an absurd amount of time choosing what to wear, finally settling on jeans and a soft cashmere sweater, wanting to look approachable rather than corporate. Her driver seemed surprised by the Queen's address but made no comment as he helped her into the specialized vehicle. James met her at the entrance to his building, a modest but well-maintained complex that now featured a newly installed ramp at the front door. The super put it in last week, he explained, following her gaze. Said it was overdue, making the building more accessible. But Rebecca noticed the fresh paint on the concrete, the careful craftsmanship of the railings, and suspected James had been involved in more than just requesting the accommodation. The gesture touched her deeply, not because she couldn't have managed without it, but because he had anticipated a need without making it into a grand statement. The apartment was small but warm, filled with Lily's artwork on every wall. The furniture was mismatched but comfortable, and the smell of garlic and tomato sauce filled the air. Lily bounded over, immediately grabbing Rebecca's hand. Come see my room, I want to show you my art supplies. The evening unfolded with a naturalness that surprised them all. Lily chattered through dinner about school, her best friend Marcus, the book she was reading about a detective dog. Rebecca found herself relaxing completely, the constant pressure to perform to prove herself worthy despite her disability absent in this small, warm kitchen. After dinner, while James washed dishes, Lily curled up next to Rebecca's chair, showing her a photo album. This is Mommy, she said, pointing to a woman with Lily's same bright eyes and warm smile. Daddy says she's in heaven now, watching over us. Do you think she can see us from there? Rebecca touched the photo, gently choosing her words carefully. I think the people we love never really leave us. They stay in our hearts and our memories, in the way we see the world because of what they taught us. Lily considered this seriously, her small face solemn. Daddy's been happier since he met you. He smiles more. Maybe Mommy sent you to help us not be so sad. James, listening from the kitchen, felt his throat tighten with emotion. He watched Rebecca smooth Lily's hair, saw the tender expression on her face, and realized that somewhere along the way, he had begun to fall for this remarkable woman. The thought terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. As the evening wound down and Lily was sent to brush her teeth, James walked Rebecca to the door. Thank you for coming, for being so wonderful with Lily. She doesn't open up to many people. She's an amazing little girl, Rebecca said sincerely. You've done an incredible job raising her. I muddle through, James admitted with a self-deprecating smile. Some days better than others. But tonight felt right, complete somehow. Before Rebecca could respond, Lily appeared in her pajamas for a goodbye hug. As she wrapped her small arms around Rebecca's neck, she whispered, Will you come back, please? If your dad says it's okay, Rebecca whispered back, her eyes meeting James's over Lily's head. It's more than okay, he said softly. It's hoped for. The drive home was a blur for Rebecca, her mind replaying every moment of the evening. She had been in relationships before, had thought she knew what connection felt like. But this was different. This was being seen, truly seen. Not as a CEO or a woman in a wheelchair, but as simply Rebecca. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. As her car approached her building, Rebecca realized with sudden clarity that she didn't want to return to her empty penthouse. The thought of its pristine silence, its perfect accessibility that accommodated her wheelchair but not her heart, felt unbearable after the warmth of James's apartment. For the first time since the accident, Rebecca allowed herself to imagine a different future, one where her worth wasn't measured in acquisitions and portfolio growth, but in the light in a child's eyes when she told a story in the quiet understanding between two people who had both known profound loss. The possibility was as frightening as it was exhilarating. Their relationship evolved naturally over the following weeks. Dinners at James' apartment became a regular occurrence, sometimes with Rebecca bringing takeout from restaurants too expensive for James's budget, other times with James cooking simple meals that nevertheless tasted better than anything Rebecca had eaten at five-star establishments. Lily began referring to Rebecca nights with eager anticipation, creating new drawings for each visit, building an illustrated history of their growing connection. At work, James started his consulting position, wearing his old suits that Martha had carefully preserved. The transition was both smoother and more challenging than expected. His financial acumen remained sharp, but technology had evolved during his 6-year absence, requiring rapid adaptation. He maintained his janitorial shift 3 mornings a week, refusing to completely abandon the steady work that had sustained his family through difficult years. The dual role raised eyebrows among both groups of colleagues, the consultants who couldn't understand his attachment to manual labor, and the maintenance staff who suspected he was putting on airs with his return to finance. Rebecca watched his navigation of these two worlds with admiration, recognizing a resilience that matched her own. They were both boundary crossers in their own ways. She as a disabled woman in the ablest world of high finance, he as a widowed father straddling socioeconomic divides. Perhaps this shared experience of being other while refusing to be limited by it was part of what drew them together. Their connection deepened through small, meaningful moments. Rebecca teaching Lily to play chess on a special board with raised squares she could feel. James helping Rebecca during a particularly difficult physical therapy session, seeing her vulnerability without making her feel weak. Quiet conversations after Lily was asleep, sharing hopes and fears they rarely voiced to others. But their growing closeness did not go unnoticed, nor without consequences. Martha watched with increasing concern her protective instincts for her son and granddaughter, warring with her recognition of the happiness Rebecca brought to their lives. Thomas Anderson and several board members continued to express subtle disapproval of what they perceived as Rebecca's inappropriate relationship with a former maintenance employee, and James's new consulting colleagues made barely concealed insinuations about his connection to the powerful CEO, questioning whether his position was earned or bestowed as a personal favor. Rebecca and James navigated these external pressures as best they could, establishing professional boundaries at work while allowing their personal relationship to blossom in private. But the strain occasionally showed, particularly when well-meaning friends or colleagues made thoughtless comments or assumptions. At a business dinner where James accompanied Rebecca as her guest, an intoxicated client made a crude joke about her hiring a nurse to take care of her. The comment hit every insecurity Rebecca harbored about being perceived as helpless, about being a burden on those she cared for. Though she maintained her composure throughout the evening, the remark festered, awakening doubts she had thought laid to rest. James sensed her withdrawal over the following days. The subtle distancing, the return to more formal conversation, the canceled dinner plans. When he finally confronted her about the change, Rebecca hesitated before admitting the truth. "I'm afraid of becoming a burden to you. You've already been a caretaker once. I can't ask you to do that again." The concern mirrored Martha's warning so closely that James wondered if the two women had somehow communicated. He took Rebecca's hand, his expression serious. "You've never asked me for anything I wasn't eager to give. Being with someone isn't about keeping score or measuring burdens. It's about choosing each other, challenges and all." "But your mother's right," Rebecca insisted. "My disability complicates things. There are places I can't go, activities I can't participate in. What about when Lily wants to go hiking or play at the beach? What about if we wanted to travel together? Everything requires extra planning, special arrangements, contingencies for when things aren't accessible." James's response was gentle but firm. "Every relationship has complications, Rebecca, Emily and I had to plan around her art shows and teaching schedule. Parents plan around their children's needs. People make accommodations for the ones they care about, not because they're burdens, but because they're worth it. His words eased her immediate fears, but the conversation revealed a deeper issue they had been avoiding: the growing seriousness of their relationship and the need to consider its long-term implications. They were no longer just friends enjoying each other's company. They were becoming a unit with all the complexity that entailed. Martha's concerns about their relationship reached a breaking point when she overheard Lily asking James if Rebecca could be her new mommy someday. The question, innocent as it was, crystallized her fears about her granddaughter becoming attached to a relationship that might not last, about her son taking on responsibilities she believed would eventually become overwhelming. She resolved to speak with Rebecca directly to make her understand the potential consequences of continuing this relationship. The opportunity came one morning when Martha was dropping Lily off at school and happened to see Rebecca entering the Meridian Capitol building. Without allowing herself time to reconsider, she approached the younger woman in the lobby. "Miss Morgans, I think we need to talk." Martha began, her voice strained but determined. "It's about James and Lily." Rebecca's surprise was evident, but she nodded, gesturing toward a quiet corner of the lobby. "Of course, Mrs. Walker. Is everything all right?" Martha took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I know you care about my son and granddaughter. I can see that. But I need you to understand something." Martha's eyes met Rebecca's directly, decades of protective maternal love, hardening her resolve. "James has been through hell. He lost his wife, his career, everything that mattered to him except Lily. He's finally found some stability, some peace, and now I'm here complicating everything." Rebecca finished softly. Martha didn't deny it. "James doesn't need another loss. He doesn't need to become a caregiver again to watch someone he loves struggle with medical issues. And Lily doesn't need to get attached to someone who might not be able to be there for her in all the ways a child needs." The older woman's voice softened slightly. "Can you honestly tell me that your condition won't limit what you can do for them, that it won't eventually become a burden?" The word burden hung in the air between them. It was Rebecca's greatest fear, verbalized by someone whose opinion mattered deeply to the two people she had come to love. "You're right," Rebecca said quietly, her voice steady despite her breaking heart. "I am limited. I can't run with Lily in the park. I can't help James with physical tasks. There are doctor's appointments, adaptations, challenges that come with my condition." She met Martha's gaze unflinchingly. "If that makes me a burden, then perhaps you are right to be concerned." Martha seemed surprised by the admission. But before she could speak, Rebecca continued, her voice growing stronger. "But I can love them. I can support James's dreams, encourage him to use his brilliant mind again. I can help Lily with homework, teach her about art and science and the power of perseverance. I can show her that limitations don't define us." Rebecca leaned forward slightly in her wheelchair, her eyes never leaving Martha's. "I may not be what you envisioned for your son, Mrs. Walker, but I promise you no one could love them more." Martha stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked away without another word. But the damage was done. The word burden echoed in Rebecca's mind, growing louder with each passing hour. That night, James called, excited about a financial report he had read, wanting to discuss it with Rebecca. She kept the conversation short, pleading a headache. She did the same the next day and the next. When he suggested dinner that weekend, she claimed a work emergency. The lies came too easily, each one building a wall between them. James knew something was wrong. Rebecca's warmth had been replaced by professional distance. She stopped coming to the office early, timing her arrivals for when she knew he would be on a different floor. When they did accidentally meet, she was polite but distant, their connection severed like a cleanly cut thread. Lily noticed the change immediately. "Daddy, why doesn't Miss Rebecca come over anymore?" she asked one night, her voice small and confused. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart," James assured her, though he was equally bewildered. "She's just busy with work. But she was busy before and she still made time for us," Lily pointed out with irrefutable child logic. "Maybe she's sad again. We should make her feel better, like she made us feel better." James stared at his daughter, struck by her wisdom. They had been so focused on their own healing that he hadn't considered Rebecca might need healing too. But from what had changed, the answer came when he confronted his mother that weekend. Martha was babysitting Lily while he supposedly ran errands, but instead he sat her down for a conversation. "What did you say to her?" he asked without preamble. Martha tried to deny it, but James knew his mother too well. Finally, she admitted to the conversation in the lobby, justified it as protecting him and Lily. "You called her a burden." James's voice was dangerously quiet. "You took a woman who has fought every day to maintain her independence, who has shown nothing but strength and grace, and you called her a burden." "I was thinking of you," Martha insisted. "Of Lily. You don't understand what you're signing up for." James stood pacing the small living room. "No, Mom, you don't understand. Rebecca isn't Emily. This isn't about watching someone I love deteriorate. This is about choosing to love someone who has already faced her worst-case scenario and emerged stronger. She's not dying, Mom. She's living fully and completely in spite of everything. And she's taught Lily and me to do the same." Martha's eyes filled with tears. "I just don't want you to hurt anymore. The only thing hurting me right now is losing her," James said firmly. "Mom, I love her. Lily loves her. We were becoming a family." He trailed off the weight of what had been lost, hitting him like a physical blow. Martha was quiet for a long moment, absorbing her son's words. The fierce protectiveness that had driven her to speak with Rebecca now seemed misguided in the face of James's pain. She had acted out of love, but love clouded by fear. Fear of seeing her son become a caretaker again, fear of watching him suffer. But in trying to shield him from potential pain, she had caused immediate harm. "Then fight for her." Martha finally said, her voice soft but resolute. "If she means that much to you, don't let my fears cost you a chance at happiness. Fight for her." James wasn't sure if Rebecca would even speak to him. She had become expert at avoiding him, her assistant running interference, her schedule suddenly packed with meetings and travel. He needed a different approach, one that wouldn't allow her to retreat behind her professional walls. The opportunity came in the form of Meridian Capital's annual charity gala. As CEO, Rebecca would have to attend, and her assistant couldn't shield her from an event filled with the company's most important investors and partners. James convinced the event coordinator to let him work the event despite it being outside his usual hours, promising to handle any issues that might arise in the ballroom's technical setup. On the night of the gala, James arrived early, dressed in his best suit, the one he had preserved from his days as a financial analyst. The hotel ballroom was transformed into an elegant wonderland, crystal chandeliers, casting a warm glow over tables adorned with fresh flowers and gleaming silverware. New York's financial elite mingled in evening wear that cost more than James earned in months sipping champagne and making the connections that powered Wall Street's invisible machinery. He spotted Thomas Anderson holding court with several board members, their expressions self-important as they discussed market projections. It was a world James had once been part of before grief and love had reordered his priorities. Now he moved through it like a ghost recognized by some former colleagues who did double takes as they passed, clearly wondering what he was doing there. A ripple of attention signaled Rebecca's arrival. She wore a stunning navy dress, her wheelchair decorated with subtle silver accents that matched her jewelry. She was radiant, commanding the room despite being seated. But James could see the sadness in her eyes, the way her smile didn't quite reach them. He watched as she navigated the event with professional grace, accepting congratulations on Meridian's recent acquisition, discussing charitable initiatives with potential donors. She was in her element, yet somehow separate from it all, an island of solitary strength amid the social current. James waited, biding his time until Rebecca was momentarily alone between conversations. Then he approached not as the janitor, but as the man who loved her. "You look beautiful," he said simply. Rebecca's breath caught. "James, what are you doing here, fighting for us?" He moved closer, his voice low but intense. "I know what my mother said to you. I know she called you a burden. And I know that's your worst fear, that you'll be too much trouble, too complicated, too difficult to love." "James, please," Rebecca whispered, aware of the people around them. "Not here." "Yes, here," he said firmly. "In front of everyone, because I want them all to know that I love you. Not in spite of your wheelchair, not with caveats or conditions. I love your brilliant mind, your terrible jokes, the way you eat pizza with a knife and fork. I love how you've made Lily feel seen and valued. I love your strength and your vulnerability. You are not a burden, Rebecca. You are a gift." Tears were streaming down Rebecca's face now, and she didn't care who saw. Your mother was right, though. There are things I can't do, things that will be harder because of my condition. James knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. And there are things I can't do. I can't give you a luxurious life. I can't erase the pain of what happened to you. I can't be the successful financial analyst I once was, but I can love you. Lily can love you. We can be a family. Imperfect and complicated and real. Isn't that enough? Before Rebecca could answer, a small voice piped up from behind James. Please say yes, Miss Rebecca. They turned to find Lily there in her best dress, Martha beside her, looking uncomfortable but determined. Rebecca blinked in confusion. Lily, Mrs. Walker. Martha stepped forward, her hands twisted together nervously. I owe you an apology. I let my fears speak instead of my heart. She glanced at James, drawing strength from his encouraging nod. James is right. You're not a burden. You're the woman who brought my son back to life, who made my granddaughter laugh again. Martha's voice grew steadier as she continued. I was afraid of history repeating itself. I watched my son lose himself trying to save Emily. I didn't want to see him hurt like that again. But I was wrong to project that fear onto you. If you can forgive a foolish old woman's mistakes, I would be honored to welcome you to our family. Lily didn't wait for adult formalities. She launched herself at Rebecca, hugging her tightly. We're going to be a family now, right? A real family. Rebecca held Lily close, her eyes meeting James's over the child's head. The wall she had built between them crumbled completely in the face of this child's simple, unconditional acceptance. Yes, she said, her voice strong and clear. A real family. The surrounding guests, who had been pretending not to eavesdrop on this intensely personal moment, broke into spontaneous applause. The sound spread across the ballroom like a wave, drawing attention from all corners. Thomas Anderson pushed through the crowd, his expression a mixture of disbelief and irritation. Rebecca, he hissed, this is hardly the time or place for such personal matters. The donors expect a certain level of professionalism. Rebecca straightened in her chair, 5 years of proving herself in a world that constantly underestimated her, crystallizing into perfect clarity. Do you know what donors really want, Thomas? They want authenticity. They want to support a company with a soul, not just a balance sheet. She gestured to the crowd around them, many of whom were smiling or wiping away tears. Look around. This moment just raised more for our foundation than your last 3 investment pitches combined. Thomas faltered, unprepared for her directness. The board will have concerns about the optics of your relationship with a former maintenance employee. It could affect investor confidence. Rebecca's laugh was genuine, startling in its freedom. The board hired me for my results, not my personal life. Our stock is up 17% this quarter. Our client retention rate is the highest in the industry. She reached for James's hand, drawing strength from his presence. And if anyone has a problem with who I love, they're welcome to invest elsewhere. A distinguished older gentleman stepped forward from the crowd. Harold Winters, Meridian's largest individual investor. I've been following this company since before you were CEO. Ms. Morgan, he said, nodding respectfully toward Rebecca, I've watched you transform it into something extraordinary while facing challenges most of us can't imagine. His gaze shifted to include James and Lily. If this is the family that supports you, then I'd say Meridian is in excellent hands. The murmurs of agreement from the surrounding guests made it clear which way the wind was blowing. Thomas retreated, recognizing defeat, while Harold raised his champagne glass in a toast. To authentic leadership, the kind that recognizes what truly matters in business and in life. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and genuine well wishes. Rebecca was surprised by how many colleagues approached to express their support. People who had worked alongside her for years, but had always maintained professional distance, perhaps unsure of how to bridge the gap her disability seemed to create in their minds. Now, having witnessed her vulnerability and joy, they connected with her on a human level that transcended corporate hierarchy. As the gala wound down, James, Rebecca, Lily, and Martha found themselves in a quiet corner, the 4 of them contemplating the unexpected turn the evening had taken. So what happens now? Martha asked, the practical question hanging in the air. Rebecca and James exchanged glances, both realizing they hadn't planned beyond this moment of reconciliation. Now we figure it out one day at a time, James replied. Like any family. Lily, exhausted but happy, had fallen asleep against Rebecca's wheelchair, her small hands still clutching Rebecca's dress. The sight of her there, so trusting and content, solidified something in Rebecca's heart. Whatever happened next, whatever challenges they faced, this was worth fighting for. In the months that followed, Rebecca and James navigated their relationship with careful intention, mindful of the external pressures from both their worlds. At Meridian, Rebecca established clear professional boundaries to address any concerns about conflicts of interest, while James continued to balance his consulting work with his remaining janitorial shifts. They faced skepticism from some quarters, colleagues who questioned James's qualifications, friends who wondered if Rebecca was settling, strangers who stared when they were out together. But these reactions only strengthened their resolve to define their relationship on their own terms. Lily flourished in the warmth of their growing family. She appointed herself Rebecca's official ambassador at school, proudly telling anyone who would listen about her new mom who runs a whole company and has a super fast wheelchair. When a classmate made an insensitive comment about Rebecca not being her real mom, Lily responded with the wisdom of a child who had already learned that family transcended conventional definitions. "She's real to me." Martha's relationship with Rebecca evolved from wary acceptance to genuine affection. The older woman found unexpected common ground with Rebecca in their shared protectiveness of James and Lily, and Rebecca discovered in Martha a pragmatic ally who understood the practical challenges of navigating a world not designed for difference. 6 months after the gala, they were married in a simple ceremony in Central Park. Rebecca wore her grandmother's wedding dress, altered to flow beautifully over her wheelchair. James couldn't stop smiling, and Lily served as flower girl, scattering rose petals with enthusiasm and precision. Martha sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face. No longer tears of fear, but of joy. The reception was held in the community room of James's apartment building, transformed by Lily's artwork and strings of twinkling lights. It was a deliberate choice, a celebration that honored where they had been rather than pretending they were something they were not. Janitors mingled with executives, the boundaries between their worlds dissolving in the face of shared humanity and joy. In his wedding toast, James spoke about second chances. Life doesn't always go according to plan. Sometimes it breaks us in ways we never imagined. But if we're lucky, very lucky, we find someone who sees our broken pieces not as damage, but as character. Someone who doesn't want to fix us, but to grow alongside us. Rebecca, you've taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose imperfections complement your own. Rebecca's response was typically direct. James told me once that I deserved better. He was wrong. I didn't deserve better. I deserved exactly him. Someone who saw me not as inspiration or tragedy, but as simply Rebecca. Someone who taught me that needing help doesn't make you weak, that accepting love doesn't make you a burden. Together we're not perfect, but we're perfectly ourselves. Lily had the last word, as she often did. Standing on a chair to reach the microphone, she announced with childish wisdom, "My daddy was sad for a long time, and Miss Rebecca, Mom Rebecca now, was sad too. But together they're happy, and that's what families do. They make each other happy. Even when things are hard, even when legs don't work or mommies go to heaven, families find ways to be happy together. And we're the best family ever." As the evening wound down, Rebecca and James found a quiet moment on the building's rooftop garden, the city lights spreading below them like a blanket of stars. Lily was asleep in James's arms, exhausted from the excitement. "No regrets?" James asked softly. Rebecca reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "Only one, that it took us so long to find each other." "Maybe we found each other exactly when we were meant to," James suggested. "When we were ready to see past our own pain to the possibility of joy." Their life together wasn't without challenges. The practical realities of blending their lives required careful navigation. From finding a home that could accommodate Rebecca's wheelchair while remaining within their budget to establishing new routines that worked for all of them. There were medical setbacks, professional jealousies, the everyday complications of raising a child who had known profound loss. But these challenges no longer felt like insurmountable obstacles, but rather the ordinary texture of a life built on love and mutual respect. 1 year after their wedding, they moved into a ranch-style house on Long Island that they had renovated to meet their specific needs. The modifications were seamlessly integrated into the design plan. Wide doorways that didn't announce their purpose, an entrance ramp disguised as part of the landscaping and open floor plan that allowed Rebecca to move freely while still creating distinct living spaces. James had fully embraced his return to finance, though not in the high-pressure world he had once inhabited. Instead, he divided his time between consulting and a financial literacy program he had established for families struggling with medical debt, a project born from his own experience after Emily's illness. Rebecca continued to lead Meridian Capital, implementing policies that better supported employees with disabilities and those dealing with family crises, recognizing that talent came in many forms. On a sunny Saturday morning, 2 years into their marriage, James was making pancakes while Rebecca helped Lily with a science project for school. The kitchen was filled with the comfortable chaos of family life. Bowls of batter stacks of books, Lily's running commentary on the properties of volcanoes. Martha arrived with fresh berries from the farmer's market, settling into what had become her regular weekend routine. She watched her son flip pancakes with theatrical flair, making Lily giggle while Rebecca explained the difference between magma and lava. The scene was so ordinary and yet so miraculous. Four people who had each known profound loss now creating something new together. As they gathered around the table, Lily suddenly asked, "Do you think people can be born more than once?" The adults exchanged curious glances. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" James asked. Lily considered her words carefully, her face serious. "Well, I was thinking, when Mommy Emily died, part of you died too, Daddy. And when Miss Rebecca, Mom, had her accident, part of her died too. But then you found each other, and it's like you both got born again into something new. Not the same as before, but still good." Rebecca felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Out of the mouths of babes. I think you're right, Lily. Sometimes we do get second chances at life. Not to erase what happened before, but to create something new from it." Martha reached across the table to squeeze her granddaughter's hand. "You know, Lily, that's one of the wisest things I've ever heard. And I've lived a lot longer than you." Lily beamed under the praise, then immediately switched topics to whether they could add chocolate chips to the remaining pancake batter. The moment passed, the conversation moved on, but Rebecca held on to it. This child's perfect articulation of what their family had become, not a replacement for what was lost, but a new creation built from the remnants, beautiful in its own right. Later that day, as James and Lily worked in the garden, Rebecca received an email from Harold Winters. The investor had nominated her for a prestigious leadership award, citing not just Meridian's financial performance, but the way she had transformed its corporate culture. She had been selected as a finalist, and the awards ceremony would be held the following month. She wheeled out to the garden to share the news, finding James on his knees beside Lily, both of them dirt-smudged and intent on planting tomato seedlings. The sight filled her with a contentment she had never expected to find. Before her accident, she had measured success by achievements, acquisitions, the relentless upward trajectory of her career. Now she understood that true success was this: the ability to be fully present in a moment of ordinary beauty. James looked up, noticing her expression. "Good news?" he asked. Rebecca smiled. "Just thinking that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." At the awards ceremony the following month, Rebecca was indeed honored for her leadership. When asked in an interview what she considered her greatest accomplishment, she surprised the reporter by not mentioning Meridian's record profits or innovative investment strategies. "My greatest accomplishment is learning that vulnerability isn't weakness," she said. "For years, I thought independence meant doing everything alone. I built walls disguised as self-sufficiency, measuring my worth by how little I needed from others." She glanced at James and Lily in the front row, drawing strength from their presence. But true strength isn't found in isolation. It's found in connection, in allowing ourselves to be seen fully with all our capabilities and limitations, and loving others with the same completeness. The reporter seemed taken aback by her candor. "That's not the typical CEO response," he noted. Rebecca laughed. "Perhaps that's exactly why it needs saying. In business, we talk about leveraging assets and mitigating liabilities. But in life, sometimes what we perceive as our greatest liabilities, our wounds, our differences, our needs, become our greatest assets when we stop trying to hide them." Her words resonated far beyond the business community, touching something universal about human connection and resilience. In the weeks that followed, Rebecca received hundreds of messages from people who had felt seen in her vulnerability, not just those with physical disabilities, but anyone who had ever felt that some aspect of themselves made them unworthy of love or success. She responded to as many as she could not, with platitudes about overcoming limitations, but with an honesty that acknowledged both struggle and joy. This too became part of her legacy, not just as a business leader who happened to use a wheelchair, but as someone who had helped redefine the very metrics by which we measure a successful life. On their second wedding anniversary, James surprised Rebecca with a hand-carved wooden box. Inside was a collection of small mementos from their journey together. The handkerchief from their first meeting, Lily's first drawing of the three of them, a napkin from their wedding reception. There was also a small brass key. "What's this for?" Rebecca asked. James smiled. "I had the janitor's closet where we used to talk turned into a reflection room for employees. A place where people can go when they need a moment of quiet or connection." The plaque on the door reads, "Sometimes strength means asking for help. Sometimes courage means saying yes to love." Rebecca touched the key gently. "You know, 5 years ago, if someone had told me that being hit by a drunk driver would eventually lead to the happiest time of my life, I would have thought they were cruel or delusional. But here we are." "Here we are," James agreed, sitting beside her on the porch swing they had installed to watch the sunset together. "Not despite what happened to us, but somehow strangely because of it. All those broken pieces led us here." Rebecca leaned against his shoulder, watching Lily and Martha planting fall flowers in the garden. "Every heart deserves a home," she said softly. "Not a perfect home, not an easy home, but a real home where love is measured not by what you can do, but by who you choose to be." And in choosing each other day after day through challenges and joys, setbacks and triumphs, they had created something stronger than any of them could have built alone. A family founded not on shared blood or conventional expectations, but on the deliberate daily choice to love without conditions. Not the life any of them had planned, but exactly the one they needed.